On the Track is a web TV show about cryptozoology, natural history, green issues and whatever else the team feel like making up as they go along. Enjoy!
So what do we have in this episode, Mr. John?
Well, Hennis, it's really quite straightforward this week. After a few parish notices, and in fact there were more than a few parish notices this time, but after that is underway, and a brief visit to Sumatra, a very brief visit to Sumatra with Richard and Carl, we then go to the land of the bogs and the little people to meet Ronan Coghlan, who's going to tell us all about horse-eels. Capiche?
I really like the old credits.
What's lined up in today's show, mate?
Well, Barry, we are going to be helping Sarah Brightman chase a crab into a cheese shop.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's John Downs. I'm the director of an organisation called the Centre for Fortean Zoology, and every week, twice a week in fact, we bring you a miscellany of hard science, weird shit, but surreality. What's surreality, you may ask? Well, check this out. As I've said on many occasions, the CFZ is not just a mystery animal research organisation, it is, in very real ways, a family. And all families, sadly, have at times when people die, and joyfully have times when people are born. And this episode I want to say a big goodbye, a very heartfelt goodbye, because I was very fond of her, to Lynn Inglis, Graham Inglis's mum. And I'm sure you know that Graham Inglis has been Deputy Director of the CFZ for the past 25 years. And Graham and I went down a few weeks ago to Exmouth for his mother's funeral. And I want to say hello to Ibrahim, a little boy who was born a few weeks ago and who is the second son of CFZ Administratrix Miss Guinevere. So here we have the numbers of the CFZ remaining stable because we have a new person who's been born and an old person who has passed on to the next stage of the journey. Good luck to you both. Now I want to just explain to you all why I'm lolling back here like a fat lady from the Regency period in a sedan chair. Well, it's because, as I believe I have mentioned in the last few weeks, that I have got bad problems with my feet, and the people in the hospital who are treating my feet several times a week have told me to keep my feet off the ground to give them a chance to heal. And the pun about heels and heels is not lost on me. So I am having to sit back with my feet up in the air, which makes me look really far more indolent than I actually am. And the only person who actually approves of this is, as you can see, Lilith, who really likes the fact I'm sitting back with all these pillows, because she has now got somewhere that she can make her own and hold forth from. Because although there is the ongoing battle between Peanut and Archie as to who is the alpha male, there is no battle at all as to who is alpha female and really in charge of the household, and that is Miss Lilith Tinkerbell Downs, who's sitting here. Now I want to say a big thank you to my two lovely housekeepers, Miss Shelley and Miss Judy, who are doing a fantastic job. And guess what? They've even now reached the library. Now the library has been neglected since Mother died, and basically it looked as if it was a council rubbish tip inhabited by a family of alcoholic badgers. But now it's beginning to look like a library. Cop a load of this. There is an awful lot more work to be done before, in January or February, Richard Muirhead, who you may or may not know, has a degree in librarianship, is coming down. He's going to start organising the books into shelves where they can actually be amongst other books of the same sort of genre. This is going to be a job that I just haven't got the patience for, but Richard, God bless him, is going to do a really good job of. But, and there's always a but, isn't there? At the moment, although the library is much better than it was, it's even worse than usual for being able to find anything. And although I know that I've got a copy of Graham McEwan's book, The Mystery Animals of Britain and Ireland, I can't find it. We'll find it in the end, I'm sure, and it will go up along the other books on the same sort of subject. But until then, I am going to have to ask one of you guys, can you please scan in the section in the final chapter about the Bally Beast? If you can send it to me, I'd be very grateful, because our very own Ian Squibbs is going to be going to Bally Rectory very soon, and I want him to be able to talk about the Bally Beast. And when I spoke to him this afternoon, he'd never heard of it. So if there's anybody out there who has a copy of the Graham McEwan book and a scanner, please scan it in for me and send it to me, preferably on Facebook Messenger. I'd be very, very grateful. Now, something else that I want to talk about. In recent weeks, you may or may not have noticed that Richard Muirhead has taken over the job of doing quite a lot of the weekly updates to the CFZ blog on the new website. But something which I have noticed recently is that there are a lot of sightings of cougars, pumas, whatever you want to call them, mountain lions, whatever you wish, that are being reported in places where they're not supposed to be. Now, it's quite easy to find these sightings, because if you just put in puma, cougar, mountain lion into Google News reports, they will send them automatically to your email inbox. But I'm looking for somebody who can please go through these starting nowish and put them into readable format on the CFZ blog on the website. If you're interested in doing that, please get in touch with me and I will show you how to do it. I promise you it's very, very simple. I just haven't got the time on top of everything else that I do, because at the moment I'm in and out of hospital 3 times a week, which is a complete pain in the neck, or rather a pain in my feet. And finally, I have been approached by several people who are very impressed with the footage that we've broadcast from the Sumatra expedition, and very impressed with the special shows we've done on the Sumatra expedition, but want to know what's going to happen next. So guys, what happens next in the CFZ hunt for the Orang Pendek?
We have to go back. We came so close to getting it on film. I think Carl saw it. I think what was running away in the jungle there was an orang pendek. That's what makes sense, because we heard it calling, and I think Carl caught a glimpse of it as it ran away, rather like Dally and Eggy did. if I'd have run around that bush, I'd have got it on film. So we've got to go back, and we've got to go back to that area. We've got to put up cameras and leave them there for months rather than days. And we've got to go deeper into the jungle and try and catch it on film and try and get hair samples.
Anything else, boys? Either of you?
I actually did think of something a minute ago, I've forgotten it.
What's your final impressions of the expedition?
It's hard work, very, very hard work. Just getting some water. You have to kayak it down a mountain again each day and things like that. It's not. I don't think comfort, like Richard said, I don't think comfort is a concept that's ever been introduced into Sumatra, because we didn't get comfortable again, did we, until we found a hotel?
Yeah,
and
then we got knocked up at 3 a.m. by nutcases with guns looking for unmarried couples to arrest.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy, really.
But you want to do it again?
Yes, we want to do it again and again and again until we prove orang pendek is a real animal. Because if we can prove orang pendek is a new species of ape, then the eyes of the world will be on Sumatra, and they will be forced to protect the rainforests. And you're not just saving orang pendek, you're saving the Sumatran rhino, the saltwater crocodile, the Sumatran tiger, the Sumatran elephant, the hornbills, the gibbons, the reticulated pythons, the monkeys.
Something like that would completely revolutionise conservation on the island.
And that is our real mission, isn't it? It's not just to go and find animals, it's to make the world a better place.
Yes, you were asking about the horse-eels of the west of Ireland. Now, the term horse-eel really seems to have become popular among cryptozoologists since Holliday wrote his book on lake monsters. Now, the term does antedate him. It was used before, but generally you find these lake monsters were referred to by the locals of the west of Ireland as ach ishka, which is Irish for horse of the water. They weren't called horse eels until they began to speak English out there, and indeed that happened quite recently in various areas, and in various areas they still don't speak English as the ordinary language. As a result, you have to be careful when you're translating. Now, there's no suggestion of eel in the term ach ishka, but when these animals are described, they often sound like eels from their general physiology. And I think when the locals switched from Irish to English, they invented the word horse eel, but I don't think it's a word of great antiquity. You never know, someone may write in saying, I found something written in 1600 that says horse eels, but I've never found anything that goes back that far. Now, having said that, the likeness of the monsters seen in Irish lochs to eels are considerable. But the two monsters that were inspected at close range are the two I'm going to talk about today. They were found in Connemara, which is a place of wilds. Tempests come in from the sea. Gales whistle through the bracken. And many of the lochs in it are not frequently visited. Some of them are completely ignorant of the tread of human foot. The odd angler may make his way out there through unpaved ways and do some odd angling, but they are often remote, and it is here that reports of horse eels come in. Now, they are often described as being larger than your average eel, but not really large enough to be termed a monster. And in two cases, they were seen, and they've come to be regarded as monsters. One was in a culvert in near Lake Crowlan. Now, Lake Crowlan, or Crowlan Loch, is a rather small lake. There are a lot of small pieces of lake out there that are linked to each other by streams, rivers, streamlets, rivulets, or what have you. And one of Holliday's informants, a man called Tom Connolly, said that his mother had told him about a large unknown animal that had been trapped in a culvert between two lakes. Now, his mother had told him this, and Holliday dates the actual thing as being something that occurred about 1880. Now, you've got to remember that this is not a first-hand experience. It's what's known as a friend of a friend story, if he and his mother were on friendly terms, of which we can assume they were. She hadn't told him he was a lazy divil and go out and get a job or anything like that. Well, now his mother told him of this strange thing, but she never describes it as a monster. She describes it as a big eel, about 14 feet in length. There's no reason why an eel couldn't grow to that length, but the local people tried to get the eel out of the culvert, and they couldn't. They had to leave it there. And eventually, said Tom Connolly, eventually, sure, the thing melted away. Now, that sounds a bit supernatural, but you've got to remember that English would not have been Connolly's usual language. And by melted, I think he means just rotted away and was eventually washed away by water when it was in a sufficient state of rotitude. But here we are dealing with what sounds very much nothing more than a large eel. A similar thing occurred near Ballynahinch Castle. There was a lake adjacent to the castle, and the lake dried up to a certain extent, first of all leaving swampy ground, and then leaving very dry swampy ground, and in this a strange creature was marooned. The thing here is, however, that the strange creature is described as a peculiar kind of eel, nothing more. They couldn't approach it. It was still alive and showing, well, hostile tendencies to those who came too near. So it must have been big enough. An ordinary sized eel would not normally frighten off a conic fisherman because they are made of tough kidney. This must have been something of a colossus, as eels go, but they did not think it any more than an eel. They got the local blacksmith to make a spear. I don't know how long it normally takes you to make a spear. I don't go in for making spears myself. They're a bit passé. But the blacksmith busily made a spear in his forge. But when they went out, they found the creature was dead. Now, normally today, if people in the west of Ireland found a dead creature, they'd report it to the local authorities or what have you. But this was in days agone, where the west of Ireland was hardly populated, and the populated areas at best were small villages. There was no kind of educated person to report it to, so they just left it, and it was washed back into the lake sometime later. It was dead. But again, they used the term eel to describe it. Now, that's in speaking English. In its original name, Achishka, there is no implication of the Irish word for an eel, which is aston. The thing here is, you may ask why these monsters would have been described as horses of the water at all, or horse eels. I feel that it was probably because of the way they held their heads up. They were shaped vaguely like a horse, and also because they are attributed to having manes attached down the back of their neck. Now, I see no reason why an eel can't grow a mane down the back of his neck. But you've also to remember that these horse eels generally are often reported from bodies of water that are far too small to sustain one horse eel forever, or indeed a body of horse eels. So these things can evidently go over land, that's assuming they exist. And in fact, there have been various reports of seeing them crawling over the land. There seems to be little evidence of legs, though one or two people have said they have legs, but that may have been their memory or their vision playing tricks on them. They're not the kind of things you approach too easily because they're generally of reasonable size. But my feeling is that if they exist, they go from one lake to another until they find something big enough to be congenial. The funny thing, though, is there is a case reported from the Isle of Skye in which a man went out. Now, the Ach Ishke is known in Scotland as well. They speak Gaelic, or Gaelic as it is called in Scotland, up there. He went out one day in the middle of a Scotch mist. Now, the thing about a Scotch mist is that you can't see a lot in it, and he was looking for his horse. He found a number of horses out in the fields, but they weren't his. And then he approached what he thought was a pony. But the pony took off and made its way into the lake. Now, the thing was, he saw it very indistinctly, but from its general shape, he thought it to be a pony. I would imagine here we have the origin, perhaps, of legends of the Kelpie, but it certainly shows how the Achishke could have obtained its name. We're talking about an eel that is big enough to look horse-like in the distance or in fog, and yet is nothing more than a large eel. Certainly, the one trapped in the culvert and the one that died before he felt the touch of the blacksmith's spear seem to have been nothing more than large eels, but eels of an extraordinary size, no less, and ones that attracted more attention than an eel normally would in the wilds of Connemara.
What happened again to the one that was trapped in the culvert?
Now, according to the informant, it melted away.
Yeah.
But I think melted, as I say, may just simply be the word he used to mean rotten. It just rotted away, as a thing would if left in a culvert. The culvert certainly exists. I've seen photographs of it. The story, though, goes back to the mother. And the estimated date, and it's only an estimate, is that the incident occurred around 1880. So it's going back a long way. One wonders about the accuracy of the tale, and also because I have a strong suspicion that English was not the informant's first language, or if it was a very corrupted kind of English, and that is why you get the word melted. It's quite clear, if you've ever been around dead eels, that if you don't do much with them and wait long enough, they'll rot. And this thing stank to high heaven. The people wouldn't go near it. When the informant was asked if they found any bones of it, he said he didn't know. His mother hadn't mentioned bones. But there you are. That is the story of the two trapped ishka, or lake monsters. I think a large eel may account for a very large number of the sightings, but I think it is either a preposterously large eel of a known species, or perhaps a completely unknown species or subspecies that has evolved. You've got to be tough to live in Connacht.
The two stories which you've told today have, in quite a few cryptozoological circles, become confused with each other. Because
Yes,
I remember being told that the one in the culvert had been speared with a giant spear, whereas you, going back to the beginnings, the spear was never used and it wasn't in the culvert anyway.
that's right. Yes, the spear was a completely different creature. That, as I say, was near Ballynahinch Castle and presumably came out of the lake, which is contiguous with the castle.
When I was younger and more, what's the word, less practical than I am now, I was thinking that it would be a good idea to mount a cryptozoological expedition to the culvert and dig up and sift one's way through all the silt that had silted up over the years in the culvert to see if one could find eel bones. But I think now I'm older, more practical, but that would be a waste
I,
of time and effort.
I think it probably would, because with the passage of time, bones could still be there. I mean, look at Richard III's bones, which were still there after many a century. But in a wild place like that, bones tend to be carried away by hungry animals, chewed by rats and things. I don't think you're likely to find anything.
Hang on, Archie wants to join us again. No,
Hello, Archie. How are you?
he's very
You're
well.
very you're very quiet and well behaved, as Jack Russells go, Archie.
He is, surprisingly so. He's become much better behaved in the last few years. Now Karina's no longer with us because he doesn't spend all day trying to guard her. But she
Yes.
didn't want to be guarded, but he insisted on doing the guarding and
Mm.
guard both her and mother and make a complete nuisance of himself so doing.
Well, I remember Prudence was very substantial. I don't think she really required a guard. In fact, she might have ended up guarding Archie if some terrible intruder or monster or ghastly being of the other world came in.
Yes, I think that malefactors coming to the house wouldn't have been. They would have got very short shrift fairly quickly. What's the latest sighting you have, the most recent sighting from any of the west of Ireland lakes of what might be one of these giant eels?
I haven't had any for quite some time. I'd have to consult my notes, as it were, to find out. And my notes are distributed in various, it would take me a long time to find out the most recent. There was in the northwest of Ireland a supposed lake monster seen in one of the rivers up there. And there was a vague rumour of a monster in Loch Ness in the north of Ireland, but it was so vague that I think it most unlikely. Loch Ness is the largest lake in Ireland, and it's also the largest lake in these islands. But if there were a monster in it, a peishta, as they're sometimes called, that covers a lot. It really means a pest. And they would likely have been reported before now. I don't see a monster, unless it is a monster that hugs the bottom of the lake all the time and never raises its head, unlike other lake monsters that are reported.
One of the things that interests me is that sooner or later, every large body of water
begets monster sightings, monster reports. Even Rutland water, which is a completely artificial huge reservoir, which I think goes back to the 1930s, there has started to be people reporting things there. And it seems
Well, you've got
it's something to do with our species' relationship with water, I think.
Yes, when you look at water, it's a very mysterious thing when it comes in a large body. You don't know what is under there. It's like supposing you're in bed and you're a little child and you imagine a vast space under the bed tenanted by bogeymen. It's the same with looking at water for an adult. Water is of its essence mysterious, particularly if the water is dark. And therefore, the imagination can play an awful lot of tricks. Besides, in the distance, things can be misperceived as monsters when they are not necessarily. But I think people have a fixation with the water. They see it, in some cases, as benevolent, but also they see it as a source of potential danger. Who knows what can come out of it, can come up from its dark depths. An interesting thing is, on 2 occasions, beluga whales have been discovered in Irish lochs, but both were clearly washed in from the sea. But they're not as mysterious as anything like the whale that was found in the middle of the Amazon jungle. That has caused a number of brows to be wrinkled, and that did actually occur, as did the arrival of the beluga whales. But water has an air of mystery about it, especially if it isn't a place in the middle of a town or city where there are many comforting humans about, and when you can shout for help if anything untoward raises its head out of the depths. But I think as a result, the human imagination has something to do with it. Seeing a deer swimming in the water, or a moose, or an elk in the distance can look like a monster quite easily. And even types of waterfowl, some geese could have the horse's head look to them. And while they are not monsters, a goose can be a terribly fearsome thing if you annoy it. You're better to eschew geese.
I know of it. So to do.
What's that?
I do my best so to do.
That is a good idea. I remember a children's petting farm where small school parties were taken, and they had geese on it, but they had to import foreign geese because ordinary barnyard geese are so fierce, the danger of their attacking the children was quite appalling, whereas the other geese, which were greylag or something, could be depended on not to show hostility. Always beware of geese, but a goose with its long neck could be mistaken in the distance for something more than a goose.
Yeah.
Something that is not answerine, as we Latinists say.
If you want to support us and help us make more content like these, please press like, subscribe, follow our Facebook page and check out our Patreon.
And as the ghost of Joe Strummer, who's an ever more regular visitor to my little studio, wants me to remind you, always press the notification bell. Otherwise you won't be told when there's a new show to watch. And that would be an awful pity, wouldn't it? Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we are at the end of another episode. I hope you have enjoyed it and found it edifying, educational and entertaining. See, I got all 3 E's right for once. And no, it's not enervating because Bob Mann told me it's not. Ha ha, I always listen to Bob Mann because he's a wonderful fellow.
I want to say a big thank you to all the people who have helped this episode, particularly my producer, Louis, Graham Inglis, Deputy Director of the Centre for Fortean Zoology, who is also my carer, and the guy who basically keeps me going as my poor beleaguered body falls faster and faster into disrepair. And my guests this time, who've been Carl Marshall, Richard Freeman and Ronan Coghlan. Who else do I want to say thank you to? Well, I particularly want to say thank you to the ladies you can hear in the background, who are the lovely Miss Judy.
Hello.
And Miss Shelley.
Hi.
And
Hello.
who are darlings and are my new housekeepers and are keeping this place looking really nice for a change, rather than like the total pigsty it usually has been in recent years. So thank you very much to you two, and I'll be back on Saturday with another episode which will feature Ian Squibbs talking about the Hook Island sea monster of Australia. And in fact we'll be back on Wednesday as well with another episode from the ASAP conference in Bath back in September. So as long as you out in Viewerland are going to be there to watch me, I'll be seeing you. Abe McCrinnan.